Happy August, everybody. So for August, I drew a sunflower. And this one is super simple, the simplest of any of them, I think, because it's only a stem stitch. But there are other things you can keep in mind, like what I've done here. I've gone ahead and started with, I happen to have a piece of my thread where it was really dark. And all of the threads are variegated, so this would work with any color that you happen to have. But I use the darkest part of the thread on these little petals that are on the back of the sunflower, and then a lighter shade of the thread for the petals that are on the front. So that's something to consider if you want to play around with that. Another option too, since there's nothing in the center, if you wanted to, you could put in some French knots. You could also do like we did here at the base of the heart and do a little woven design in there. Or you could do like a little, I always think of sunflowers as smiley, happy faces. Ooh, that's more of a divot than I wanted, but I could draw it on there a little better, I guess, so I could see what I'm doing. You could do like a little smiley face. So say these are little tiny eyes, and then a smile, just using fly stitches. No, he's got a little happy face. So that's that's an option if you want to give them some personality. When I'm stitching these leaves, like I did with the bird in June, I took that center stem and just continued it all the way up through the leaf. But then instead of doing the sides, I'm making each section its own little piece. So I'm going to come down just to where that the smaller veins are that go towards the center, and turn that corner and start stitching towards the center. I could stitch across this center, but I'm actually going to just put my needle down and bring it up on the other side so that center really stands out. And then I'm just going to go up this side and then back down the next. So that gives it a little bit of a different look than if I had just gone up one side and down the other where it's really smooth. I wanted these leaves to have some more character in their shape, because I think sunflower leaves do kind of have a little bit more lumps and bumps to them. So one thing I wanted to mention too is, since I went around this curve, this can kind of fall in a little bit. So sometimes what I will do is I'm going to just tack it over and bring my needle over that thread to kind of hold it in place there. So you can do all sorts of things like that to keep your thread where you want it. So I ended up here, and all I did was took my thread through some of the stitches on the back to have it come out down here in the right place. And again, I'm going around a curve, so I'm going to keep my thread on the outside of that curve. On this stem, it goes from wide then to just very narrow until it's just one row. So what I will do is at the point where they meet up, I'm actually kind of splitting that stitch of the line that was already there of that stem stitch. And instead of taking my usual 1/8 of an inch stitches or 1/16 of an inch, I'm going to come down a little bit longer just to make that a real gradual widening of that. So it doesn't just go from 1 to 2, it kind of gradually goes from 1 to 2 rows of stitching there. And then to get that nice point, I can come down a tiny bit farther, come back right up in that same hole. And now when I go to stitch up this side, I'm going to have a really nice sharp point there. Like that. Whoop. I got a little knot. When you get those sometimes like this, sometimes they'll just pull right out. That one isn't pulling too easily. So what you do is you take your needle and you put your needle inside of the loop. And you can kind of see that the loop, maybe, well, a lot of times the loop will be going, kind of leaning in a direction. So you want to kind of tug it in the opposite direction. I'm going to use the eye so I don't split the thread. And you just kind of pull, and then it pops out. So don't get too frustrated if you get those little knots. They come out pretty easily. But see, now you have a pretty good change from just one line of stitching to two. And then you have a nice point there at that intersection. So these little petals come out to a point, and you could do those like we do with these little guys, where it comes to that really sharp point. Another thing that sometimes I'll do is I will come up around the corner, come up right at the point, and hook that thread behind the needle, and then just tack it in place. It's kind of like a little fly stitch. And then if you do that, you just want to start your stitch halfway down that side stitch. You don't want to go all the way to the end because the stitches need to overlap just a little bit, and then just continue on. So that's another one of my little cheat things that I will do. And I never ever feel guilty about it because this whole thing is about having fun and enjoying the process. So the last thing I would say on this one, just because I am trying to do the colors of the petals differently, I would probably try to use the lighter thread on the ones that are the closest to the top of the flower, and then use this darker part of the thread to go around that circle. So that is our August, and next month we get to move on to September. Wow, the year's flying by. So keep posting pictures. I'm loving seeing them. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And happy stitching, guys. Bye.